Good evening and welcome to the Audit and Standards Committee meeting of Melton Borough Council. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio-visual system this evening and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. The Monitoring Officer and Head of Internal Audit are joining the meeting remotely. The Head of Internal Audit will leave the meeting following Agenda Item 7, the Internal Audit Plan. Due to a commitment at another authority, Agenda Items 6, 7 and 5 will be taken first. There is a quick reference card placed on the desk in front of you, which provides instructions on how to use the basic speaking function of the microphone. Members are asked to physically raise their hands in the usual way to indicate that they wish to speak and to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please switch all mobile phones to silent. I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist those who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I have no apologies. Does anyone else? Okay, the second item on the agenda is the minutes from the previous meeting. So these are to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September 2021. I am happy to propose the minutes, and do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Glancy. Agenda item 3. Are there any declarations of interest in respect to the items on the agenda this evening? No. Okay, so on to agenda item 6, the internal audit progress report. Rachel Ashley-Corn, the head of internal audit, to provide a brief introduction to the report. Oh, yes, Councillor Chandler.
Sorry, sorry I'm late, but I've had no papers for this meeting. I know I've changed houses, but I think it's disgraceful that the council couldn't send them to both addresses, or I've no internet and I've got nothing.
Okay. No worries, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so over to you, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the internal audit this evening is in relation to the internal audit plan. And so this is an update on the progress of the delivery of the audit plan and the key findings from audits delivered to date. So members will be familiar with the report, but I'll just take you through some of the key sections. There is a copy of the full internal audit plan as it stood at the time of reporting in Appendix 1 of the progress report on pages 5 and 6. So this summarises all of the key assignments that we will be delivering this year and the status of those at the time of reporting. There was a further audit report which has been finalised since the last committee meeting. So this is summarised for you in section 2.5 of the report on page 3 of the appendix. So this report was in relation to land charges, and the key findings and the opinion that we've given are provided in the summary. Ultimately, we identified some areas for improvement, particularly in relation to improving review and independent checks, introducing some management review processes around the accuracy and the consistency of the applications that have been, the details that have been included on the register. We've also reflected on the backlog of manual records which need to be uploaded onto the electronic register, and recommended that an action plan be put into place with targets to give some assurance over the completion of that. We've also identified some areas, again, for improvement around some gaps in supporting documentation. So again, we've made a recommendation there around strengthening that process, mainly in relation to management checks, again, to make sure we're ensuring consistency and quality in all of those records. So overall, we have given a satisfactory assurance opinion, and this reflects no significant areas of weakness, but some areas for improvement, as I've reflected on. So we've also included within the report an update on the implementation of audit recommendations since the last audit committee. And a summary of the implementation rates is provided for you in Appendix 3, which is on page 11 of the progress report. So you members will note from this that 3 recommendations have been completed since the last committee report. We do have 25 actions which are currently overdue. So we've summarised this between those which are less than 3 months overdue in the second line, those between 3 and 6 months overdue, and those over 6 months overdue. So those that fall into the category of over 6 months overdue and of high priority are summarised for the committee's information in the following table, Appendix 4 of the report. And these are actions that have been brought to this committee previously, but they are included this time with a further update as to the latest status that I've been given by management for the implementation of the full actions. So I won't go through all of those, but the latest updates and revised dates are provided in the table as appropriate. So we will continue to follow those up and hopefully report back to the committee meeting on in a few months, hopefully on further progress with those, or indeed the completion of those actions. So that's a quick run through of the report. We are continuing to obviously deliver work against the audit plan and remain intending to deliver at least 90% by the end of the year as planned. We are now moving to the last quarter where we deliver a number of assignments that have to be towards the end of the year so that we cover enough of the financial period. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Do any members wish to ask any questions? Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for reporting good progress against the plan. In respect of the outstanding recommendations with housing, members, I know, and I think all members do, that there's been substantial issues and substantial progress in housing with a lot of issues to deal with. So I'm reasonably comfortable with the new dates on this. In respect of the land charges report, I was pleased to see the amount the budget quoted. The first question is, when we make a charge for the search, and we by law we can only break even, is that charge allowed? Are we allowed to charge enough to cover the statutory responsibility of maintaining the register? Or do we only have to recover the application fee, the costs of working on the application? That's if could you answer that one, Rachel, for me, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, so as I understand, able to recover the cost of living service, I think that there is flexible.
Sorry, Rachel, you seem to be breaking up a little bit. Would you mind starting that again for us?
Oh, sorry about that. So my understanding is that the council can recover the costs of delivering the service on a break-even basis. So as to exactly which elements we are allowed to include in that, that's something I could go away and confirm. But my understanding is it's the full delivery of the service rather than on an application by application basis.
I think I can follow that up separately, because my question is, why are we doing it? If we can't make a profit, why are we doing it? If we can't recover the costs of maintaining the register, why are we actually providing, taking a risk at providing a service with the costs of audit and everything else, which is an internal matter? when there are private sector people who can do it? And then the other question linked to that is, were we breaking even when you did your audit?
So through you, Chair, I'm happy to take that away and just to confirm, obviously because of the way that it works, I believe that it's reviewed on a regular basis and then the costs are reflected back on. So it is then reviewed, you know, if we haven't broken even in that particular period, then we review the fees on that basis.
And finally, it would be very helpful, I think, if when you talk about recommendations, you could give us the recommendations. Could you give us could you just run through what your 3 medium level recommendations were? And that's all my questions on internal audit so far. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to take that away.
Sorry, Rachel, you've frozen again.
Sorry. So I'm happy to take that away. In terms of the recommendations, as I mentioned in my overview just now, they were in relation to introducing formal management reviews and independent checks to ensure the accuracy and consistency of the additions and amendments to the register. There is also in relation to ensuring supporting documentation is consistently held in relation to all of these, again relying on those management checks. And we recommended in relation to having an action plan in place with targets to address the backlog of manual registration forms which require uploading onto the electronic register.
Thank you, Rachel. So I would now like to invite a proposer for the recommendation, which is to note the report and progress made by the internal audit team in the delivery of the audit plan. Thank you, Councillor Posnett. Do we have a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. I would now like to move to the vote. So all those in favour? And any against? And abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so that has been approved. Oh, sorry, noted. Yeah. Next is agenda item 7, the internal audit plan. So back to you again, Rachel, for the internal audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the second report that I'm bringing to the committee this evening is looking ahead to the next financial year. So we now are in the stage of the year where we're starting to think about planning for 2022-23. So the first point in that process is that I wanted to come along to the committee this evening to set out the process I plan to follow in developing that plan and informing the coverage of internal audit for the next financial year, and to also provide the initial opportunity for the councillors, for the committee to advise on any areas where you may value assurance from internal audit during those 12 months. As I say within the report, I won't go through this line by line, but we're basically looking to develop a risk-based internal audit plan. And we will be going through the key stages that I've set out, with consulting with senior management, consulting with the committee, looking at risk registers and almost mapping out the assurances that we have at the moment against those to see where internal audit coverage would add the most value at this point. So we can end up with a very long list of areas through those various discussions and horizon scanning. And we also look at things like any legislation that might be changing in the next 12 months, any new statutory responsibilities that we need to get assurance over. So these are all things that we feed into that and make some things higher priority than others when we risk assess them. So I would like to welcome, I'll be welcome to any suggestions from the committee as to any areas you'd like for consideration onto the internal audit plan. And we can take that into consideration. I'm happy to take any questions on the process that we plan to follow. And as I say, any areas of potential coverage. I can't guarantee any of those will definitely make it onto the audit plan. They will have to be risk assessed and go through that full process, but it'll be really useful to have any feedback at this point. And yes, so as I say, it's some time now between now and when we actually draft the internal audit plan, which will come to this committee in March for formal approval. So I'm happy to take any feedback during that time. So ideally around the end of January, we'd be looking to have any initial consultation on that. So if anyone would like to contact me outside of the meeting with any areas potentially to consider for coverage, I'd be happy to receive that via email as well. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you, Rachel. I don't want to talk about the process within the paper. I'd like to recommend an addition to the paper in terms of the way that the plan is constructed. I would like specific, if the mood of the members is agreeable, I would like the process to include consulting the leader of the council, who signs with the chief executive the governance statement at the year end. We have got cabinet and leads for various responsibilities. And if you were to look at a business, a charity, or an NHS trust, they would be your board of directors. And we also have committee chairs as well. And I would like those included in the consultation. I mean, some how they want to do it, they may want to sit with the relevant director, but I do believe they also need to be able to give their things in private as well. So I think I'd like to gauge the mood of the members before formally proposing.
Does anyone have anything to add to what Don has said? Yes, Councillor Hewson.
I'd just like to support what Don has been saying. I think it would be useful if the leader and key members of the council could be part of it, because it's quite a crucial thing that we're working with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay. Oh, sorry.
And I'll propose it, the addition of that into the process, and ask for a seconder.
Yes, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ought we to specify, or can we specify the people? I think it's an extremely good idea to do this, because it then sits better with me, and I'm sure it sits better for the populace of this borough, because it's never very easy. Finances are very difficult, and I think that's what we have to do. So do you want us at this point, do you think, to specify the people, like Councillor Pritchett said, the leader? Would we want the leader, the deputy leader, and all the chairs of committees? Would that be a good idea, or what? Because it's something that I just feel we ought to. I think it's a very good thing, and I think we ought to specify. Thank you.
Yeah, over to you, Natasha.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Councillor Pritchett, are you proposing an amendment to the recommendations?
Sorry, the recommendation on page 79 is to approve the approach to developing. So if you want to add something, if we're voting for it, then you want to add something after, it becomes very difficult. So what I'm saying is, looking at what you're asking us here, I think I'm asking for an amendment for Rachel to add in, to consult the leader and the cabinet and the chairs of committees within the process. Now, give you some background to this. Obviously, they're the responsible with senior responsibility. We're going through a journey now of budget. There's been some interesting papers recently at the cabinet that will go through the draft budget through to a February budget. and they may well also be service changes plan for next year, how we do things, who manages what changes. So they'll be up to date with the current risks, which are likely to be there and known before the actual risk registers are actually updated to reflect it next year. So I say it's a technical point that I strongly believe in. So yes, I mean, whilst you've got a recommendation approves the approach, what can you do? Can you just informally agree it now and say yes? Can you add that in, Rachel, or do we have to vote for an amendment?
Yeah.
So if we were to, sorry, through you, Chair, is that if there was to be an addition of subject to consultation with the chair of this committee, because my understanding is, and Rachel might want to add to this, that it's an audit committee function. So to take it outside of that would be to take it out of the
responsibility is to capture all the big risks and to speak to the appropriate people, and that's why I'm asking for an amendment that that they speak to those people to ensure that we are aided in fulfilling our responsibility of approving the plan, that we're best informed.
So if it was to say then subject to consultation with members as a whole? No, the significant people. You talk to the Councillor de Burgh about finance. I mean, and they're also got cross interests. So I'm just saying the key people who act in responsibility, the leader, deputy leader, cabinet, and then you've got the chairs of the committees. It's quite straightforward.
I believe David Scott has something to add.
Yeah, I think what Councillor Pritchard is just trying to suggest is that when Rachel takes this away and develops the plan to bring it back to the committee, when we talk within the senior leadership team, she'll also make sure she's spoken to the leader, the cabinet and the chairs of the committees before she brings the report back to audit this committee to approve in the new year. So I think that's something potentially that Rachel can note and say she'll include that, and then make sure that point's made when the report's presented if Rachel agrees with that. So I don't think we need to change anything particularly on the minutes or the recommendation. So yeah.
Thank you for capturing that simplicity, David. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Rachel.
Oh, I don't think I've got anything further to add. I think that's that. So I'm happy to take that away and note that additional request, and we'll get the audit planning process underway on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the recommendation is that the committee approve the proposed approach to developing the audit plan for 2022-23 and to highlight any risk areas where the committee requires assurance during the year ahead. I would like to invite a proposer, please. Oh, sorry. So we have Councillor Pritchett as the proposer, and was it yourself, Councillor Holmes, that was the seconder? Oh, Councillor Hewson. Okay. So all those in favour of the recommendations? Okay, so that's unanimously in favour. Thank you. So I believe that the head of internal audit is now leaving the meeting. Thank you very much for your reports, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, and I hope to see you next meeting. Take care.
Thank you. And now we move on to agenda item number 5, which is the external audit plan. And we go over to Hayley Clark, who is the external auditor at Ernst & Young, to provide a brief introduction to the report. Thank you.
Chair. So what I'll do is I'll just briefly take you through the report, just guide you through the executive summary, and then I'm obviously happy to take any questions that you may have in relation to the detail. So if I start on page 27 of your pack, then what we've done is we've set out our assessment of the areas of risk for the 2021 audit. So in relation to those, we have 2 mandatory areas that we need to consider on every single audit. The first is around misstatements due to fraud or error, and that very much focuses on the use of journals and estimates throughout the course of the audit. Then what we've done is we have to consider the risk of fraud in both revenue recognition and also expenditure recognition. So in relation to that, we've identified two risks that we've set out there. The first is in relation to revenue recognition, and this is very much this year focused on, given the financial year that you've had in terms of additional COVID funding and also any potential impact on what we'd class as other income, or I suppose more of a commercial based income. We've focused that around the accounting for COVID funding and then also the potential understatement of other income in the year. In relation to the expenditure recognition risk, what we've done is we've looked at the overstatement of expenditure and whether there's any spend that has been brought forward into this year that should have been accounted for in 21-22. We've then also included a risk around the valuation of property, plant and equipment and investment properties. And you'll see that we've highlighted that as a significant risk for this year. That's largely because you've had a change in valuers for this year. So that brings with it an additional degree of risk that we need to focus on. We then have as our final risk the valuation of the local government pension scheme, which is something we class as a higher inherent risk. So it's not quite a significant risk, but it's still something that we focus on as part of the audit. And the main reason behind that is because of the degree of assumptions and sensitivity that's involved in accounting for that balance. If I then take you down to page 29 of your pack, we've set out our materiality levels for this year. So the level of materiality that we use when we're assessing the risk of error in the financial statements is called our planning materiality, and that's set at £574,000. We then have performance materiality, is what we perform our level of work against when we're doing our detailed testing. That's £431,000. And then we have our audit differences threshold of £29,000, which is essentially if we find any misstatements throughout the course of the audit that remain uncorrected, we will report those to you as part of our reporting. The last thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is in relation to the value for money conclusion, which is also on page 29. There has been a change in the Code of Audit Practice this year that actually includes a slightly different approach to this. So we're still focused on 3 key criteria around financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. However, we have to perform a slightly different risk assessment in planning for our work, which we're undertaking at the moment. And then if we identify any significant risks in the arrangements as a result of that, we'll undertake more detailed work. In addition to the element of the opinion that you receive each year, this year will also include an additional commentary that we'll need to issue either at the same time or just after the opinion is given. And it basically sets out at a high level the arrangements you have in place across those three areas. That will be a public document. I'm happy to go into any other areas of the report that the committee would like me to do so, but I was just going to pause there in case there was any questions.
Okay, so before we move to member questions, I would just like to invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendations that are to approve the external audit plan for 2021, confirm its understanding of and agreement to the materiality and reporting levels set out in the plan, and to note the delay to the timing of the audit accounts and subsequent publication of the audited accounts. So please may I have a proposer?
I'll propose that.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchett. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Holmes. So yes, I will now open any questions for Hayley, the external auditor. Councillor Pritchett.
Just 2 points. Why, when the audit is substantially underway now, are we getting this? I'm used to seeing this sort of document before the year end. Is there a particular reason why we're getting the planning document now rather than January? You may wish to ask. Yeah, that's all.
Yes, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, so last year's 1920 audit wasn't actually signed off until I think it was towards the back end of July. We've then had a number of changes in resourcing, including myself coming onto the audit in replacement of Helen Henshaw as she left. So the timing of that, alongside getting an audit plan to you in time for committees and papers, is slightly skewed this year. I appreciate it's not ideal, and yes, you would normally have it in advance of that. The audit is underway. I suppose we've still at this point though got the ability to present a plan to you, take on board any comments and adjust our audit approach accordingly before we're at a point where we need to come back and report to you.
Point is, from my point of view, on Appendix B, page 35, you're asking if there's any intelligence from the audit committee on frauds. I'm not aware of anything, and I don't know whether you're asking the chair or how you go about that, but I don't have any intelligence on anything like that to give to you.
Yes, over to you. Thank you.
No, thank you. We do make additional fraud inquiries, including those with the chair as well as part of the audit, and that also extends out to monitoring officer, internal audit, and also management as well.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Okay, I do actually have a question myself for you. So we are a public authority and have to ensure that we get value for money. So I would just like to understand how you can justify such an increase in fees, for such a small district council with limited resources.
No, thank you. The fee that we're proposing, or that we've recorded in there as the fee that we perceive would be needed to deliver what we'd class as a quality and safe audit, is something that we have done for every single one of our clients. I know that other audit firms are also in the process of doing that. That's very much off the back of widely publicised reports in relation to things like the Redmond Review, communications that have come out from MHCLG, or DLUC as it now is, and also scrutiny from the Public Accounts Committee, as well as those that are related to BEIS consultation. So there is a significant degree of scrutiny on the role of external audit, and that has been growing exponentially over the past couple of years and continues to grow. There is an associated cost with that, in the view of, I suppose, of EY and other audit firms, has not necessarily been reflected in the fee level that is now currently present. And there are talks underway with the PSAA in relation to that at the same time. When you also put that alongside, I think we can all, I'm hoping we're all aware of some of the reasons as to why the audits are being delivered in the timetable that they're being delivered on as well. There is a huge resourcing pressure across the profession generally. It's not just an EY issue, it's every firm. It's not isolated to public sector audit either, it's in relation to corporate audit, and that's the ability to attract and retain talent within the audit profession to enable delivery of these audits. And if you looked more broadly outside of those under the PSAA remit, there's a number of organisations that are actually struggling to find auditors at the moment. So there's obviously a cost that is associated then with being able to attract and retain an audit firm.
Okay, thank you. I am aware that there have been discussions with neighbouring authorities that would suggest that the increase that we are seeing is a lot higher than theirs. So I was just wondering if you could explain that.
Yeah, and it depends on there's a number of factors that feed into that. There's the risk assessment process, there's the nature of the balances in there. So some authorities may have housing revenue accounts, some may not, some have collection funds, some don't. So there's a risk assessment piece that goes alongside that. And then there's also a piece around, just as a couple of examples, we look at use of data, quality of working papers. I suppose we've got a model that we've looked at and applied consistently across all of our jobs in devising what the fee would be. Now, at the point in time we quote it, that may be the most appropriate fee. There may be changes to that, though, that happen year on year that may then impact that either upwards or downwards.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions from members before we move to the vote? Yes, Councillor Chandler.
Make one comment, and that is that audit fees are crucifying small businesses. I don't think there's any small business person or even medium-sized business that will tell you that the accountancy fees are getting out of control. I know in our case that, and it's a local firm, but they are quite widespread in this area, but what they charge is, well, you can't really evaluate it, where they're coming from.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Do we have any further comments? Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder. I would now like to have a raise of hands of those who are in favour. Oh, sorry, for the recommendation, sorry. I thought I read that out at the start. Yeah, okay. So those in favour? Okay, so that's 6 in favour. Those against? Abstaining. Okay, and that's 1 abstention. Thank you. On to agenda item number 4, and that's the provision of external audit services. So I will now look to the Corporate Services Manager to provide a brief introduction to the report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report just follows on, I suppose, on from the previous conversation around external audit and provision of the services. So we are looking for authority to opt into the sector-led appointment process through PSAA that would take us for a 5-year period from 22, 23 to 24 to the 5 years following that. The idea of that is that the majority of councils, over 90%, opt to go into this route because there is a definite cost saving and time benefit of allowing the PSAA to appoint the auditors through their process, as there's quite a lot of work involved if we wanted to do that ourselves, involved in such as setting up an independent chair and independent panel to oversee that. I think as the external auditor explained just a moment ago, the market is very limited and there is a tight resources. And if we were to go alone, we'd be just asking the same firms to bid for the same work. And as has been mentioned, there is this disparity in terms of some of the fee setting and some of the conversations. And from an authority point of view, where at the end of the process, external audit would put in their particular view of what the fee should be and potentially ask for additional fees. Equally, we will then be able to put our viewpoint about whether that's fair or not, and PSA sort of help arbitrate that process. If we went alone, we would have none of that, and it would be very much I think we'd end up with a lot more higher cost fee through that process. So what we're looking for is for members to support us to carry on with the process at the moment, in line with every other authority pretty much across the country, to use the PSA route to help appoint our external auditor going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. So before I open up the debate, I would like to invite a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation, which is that the committee, the authority accepts the public sector audit appointments invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors to principal local government and police bodies for 5 financial years to the 1st of April 2023, and that the Director for Corporate Services be delegated authority to give effect to the appointment. So I look for a proposer. Thank you, Councillor Illingworth.
Could I just say or ask the question? There's an implication to us making this, adopting this recommendation to the company of whom the lady across the room from us is an integral part. Is it appropriate that we be doing this with the lady present?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so I think when PSA are appointed, they all decide who actually are the auditors. So this isn't saying that we're going to end up with Ernst & Young again. So during the last 5-year period, every year we get a notification about who our auditor will be. So they tend to rotate it. So previously we had PwC to make sure that independence and that fresh pair of eyes to maintain that. So by agreeing to this, that doesn't mean we're going to end up with Ernst & Young. What we're agreeing to, or members would be agreeing to, is for us to PSA to go through the process of appointing a new set of auditors. It may well be we get Ernst & Young for a period of time, or it may well be they change that and appoint a different auditor. And it may well be that during the 5-year period, we'll get a new firm, which is what I would guess would happen, because we've had them for 3 years now. And I think having the same audit firm for 5 years would be, wouldn't necessarily be in the best interest for impartiality, etc. So they'd probably want to change that around.
Thank you for that. Job that she wasn't expecting. Thank you for the explanation.
Yes, Councillor Holmes, are you proposing?
Before.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you for proposing, Councillor Illingworth. Yes, Councillor Holmes. Yes, yeah. And then after.
That I totally agree that auditors and accountants' fees go up and up and up. And if we're doing it for 5 years, it is for the next 5 years, is it not?
From 22, 23, 24 for 5 years, but yeah.
Can we then hold the fees for the next 5 years or next 3 years, isn't it now? Can we hold those fees?
So we at the moment don't have control over the fee. So the idea is that the public sector audit authority will, as a collective, put out a tender procurement to the insurance to the audit market, of which they will then negotiate and agree a set of fees during that period of time. And the idea is that through that collective procurement process, we should end up with the cheaper fees if we went on our own. So I think we have to recognise that the fees will be higher because of what we're seeing in terms of the market generally. That makes we can't get away from that, and we have to have a external audit body appointed to undertake that inspection. So I think our view is this is the most cost-effective way of doing that, to try and minimise the increases that are likely to come through for us as a local authority.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Illingworth.
There's a point of order here. Is it not our custom, and indeed the rules, that once something is proposed, it is seconded and then debated?
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
Can we have a
Councillor
seconder
Illingworth.
then?
Yes, please may I have a seconder? Councillor Posnett, thank you.
Could I come back then, Madam Chairman? The thing is that we are, I think, are we the second smallest council in the country virtually? We're very, very small. So am I taking it then that if we are all joined together, then because we are as small as we are, and because our finances are not as good as a lot of others, then we would be paying a lesser amount?
I think we'll be paying a proportionate amount to the size of our authority. So I think when PSA look at this, they would be looking at our size of authority, and they would probably be setting a scale fee towards the lower end compared to other bigger authorities, recognising the size we are. So that might seem like the increase could be still larger than we want it to be, but it's still been the smaller scale compared to a lot of the other authorities that will see a bigger increase, that have a bigger risk exposure as well.
No. Oh, what a pity.
Okay, so we've had a proposer in Councillor Illingworth and a seconder in Councillor Posnett. I would now like to open the floor to the debate. Thank you, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you, Chair. I thought this was an excellently drafted paper, and I fully support it. And the paper itself does include the various review bodies' reports that are putting pressure on the external audit service. And so I am fully supportive of this. And I'd also like to make a comment on the point that Councillor Holmes has made. From an audit point of view, there are diseconomies of scale in auditing small organisations. So I'm fully support the paper.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Hewson.
Just one point on page 10, at the bottom, it said about relevant bodies of refunding. It's 5.6 million here was returned. What part of that funding actually came to Melton?
I can't remember the precise amounts off my head, so I'll take that away and come back and confirm to the committee.
Thank you.
To confirm the amount.
Thank you. Any further questions from members? Okay, so we have had a proposer and a seconder. I would now like to move to a vote on the recommendations. All those in favour? Okay, so we have 6 in favour and abstentions. Thank you. 1 abstention. On to agenda item 8, which is the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act update. So over to the Deputy Monitoring Officer to provide a brief introduction to the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the annual REPA report, which provides members with an update of activity in the past year. Many of you members may be familiar with the content of the report, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the general points made in the report. So REPA sets out a regulatory framework for the use of covert investigatory techniques. The techniques are restricted and used only when considered necessary, proportionate, and as a last resort to prevent crime and disorder. So since November 2012, REPA authorisation for covert surveillance requires magistrates' court approval. The use of the council's REPA powers has declined significantly over the years. We can use REPA powers for fly tipping and some licensing offences, but they need to meet the serious crime threshold to enable us to do that. We have not, at the council, haven't needed to rely on REPA at any time during 2021. To ensure authorising officers and investigating officers remain up to date and knowledgeable in respect of REPA powers, officers do receive annual training in relation to REPA, and this training is actually due to take place next week. And the council is periodically inspected by the Investigatory Powers Commissioner's Office. The last inspection was undertaken in April 2020, and that was reported to, the outcomes of that was reported to this committee, and they were very positive. But that said, it's essential we continue to maintain REPA processes and procedures, and the annual presentation of this report is to provide the committee with that assurance and oversight of compliance in this area. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before moving to questions, I would like to invite a proposer and a seconder to the recommendation that the committee notes the update for the period April 2020 to March 2021. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Posnett. So I would now like to open the debate and invite members to ask any questions or make any comments. Yes, Councillor Pritchett.
I was grateful for this report and reassured. I thought it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder. I would now like to move to the vote. All those in favour? That's 6 in favour and abstentions. Thank you, that's 1 abstention. And on to agenda item 9, which is the revised members' code of conduct. I would now like to invite the monitoring officer to provide a brief introduction to the report. I believe she's joining us via Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Super. Good evening, members. The purpose of this report before you today is to present a revised members' code of conduct for consideration prior to it being submitted to full council for approval. Members will be aware that the Localism Act places an authority under a duty to promote and maintain high standards of conduct. And in discharging that duty, we're required to adopt a code dealing with conduct that's expected of members and co-opted members. Now, the current members' code of conduct was adopted, I believe, in 2012 and last reviewed in 2017. In 2019, the Committee on Standards in Public Life published a report, and one of the main recommendations was for the Local Government Association to create an updated non-mandatory model code of conduct, which local authorities could then consider either adopting in full or adapting according to local circumstances. The LGA aimed to develop that code as a benchmark for a standard for all public office and those engaged in public debate to be issued, and they issued their code in January this year, 2021. It was subsequently updated in May 2021. So throughout the course of this year, I have met with a small group of Leicestershire monitoring officers to review the model code of conduct that was issued by the LGA and determine whether any revisions were necessary to reflect local issues. We sought to create a common code across Leicestershire, including our parish councils. The report in front of you, members, the main changes that we made to the model code of conduct are detailed at paragraph 5.5 of your report. We also recognise that Leicestershire is a two-tier authority, and some members are district councillors as well as county councillors, so dual-hatted. And with that in mind, we focused on which areas of commonality we had to create a common code that could be adopted by the county and districts and boroughs. So this was generally to, or primarily should I say, to assist those members who are dual-hatted to avoid the need for them to think about two or applying two different types of code in respect of conduct. Members may note that a local addition has been added to the LGA's model code at paragraph 3.2.2 of the appendix that details that talks about interest to provide further clarity for dual-hatted members. At the same time of those discussions, it was recognised that district councils and borough councils also have responsibility for conduct-related issues in respect of parish councils. And we've worked very closely with the Chief Executive of the Leicestershire and Rutland Association for Local Councils, LRAC, who've confirmed their commitment to continue to work with us and to encourage the adoption of this code, if it's approved by members, throughout the parishes as well. The report you'll find at paragraph 5.7 shows the progress made across the county in terms of approvals. You will note that most authorities are taking their, or have taken their codes to their audit and standards with council approval in the coming month and early next year. This locally amended code was approved by our Constitutional Review Working Group in October, and members of that group were fully supportive of presenting this locally amended code to this committee. Members will see the recommendations are at part 2 of your report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So before moving to any questions, I would like to seek a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation that the committee endorses the locally amended code of conduct as set out in Appendix B, and that the committee recommends to the council that the locally amended code of conduct as set out in Appendix B of the report be approved and implemented from the 1st of April 2022. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Glancy. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes, Councillor Chandler.
I mean, I see it says here and on page 94 that they must not remain in the room unless they've been granted dispensation. Now, a lot of parish councillors own land or are tenants of land, and they do not do this. I mean, I can categorically say at Bottisford, they declare an interest and sit there and vote, and that is totally wrong in my eyes. I mean, I was always told when I was a parish councillor way back in the 1980s, if in doubt, go out. And they don't seem to do that today. And I would like to see that actually reinforced, because I think that some of them are getting themselves in quite some messes. I mean, it's very true. If in doubt, go out. I don't know what Kieran thinks to that, but perhaps not a lot. But
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Yes, Kieran, do you have a response?
Through you, Chair, if I may. I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Councillor Chandler, and I don't know whether it provides a bit of reassurance, but if the code is approved by members and council in December, we are looking to roll out a programme of training which will include our parish councils that adopt the code. So we will pick up the interest element through that training in the new year, sort of in the first quarter of next year.
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Illingworth.
It may not be the case, but by their very nature, parish councils often are made up of a significant number of local businessmen, landowners, etc. I just worry that there could be a situation where a meeting suddenly just becomes non-quorate if all the declarations of interests were stuck to. But I guess we crossed that bridge when we came to it, if that were the situation, because in some small parishes it's almost everybody, isn't it, that's potentially got an interest in that, but it'll just have to work its way through, won't it? So there you go, that's all.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Do you have anything to respond with, Kieran?
Just a little bit of reassurance that there is provision within the Localism Act that gives further guidance on when dispensations can be granted, and that's something that we will include in the training that is offered in the early part of next year.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions or comments? Okay, so we've had a proposer and a seconder. I would now like to move to the vote on the recommendations. So can we have those in favour, please? Thank you, that's 7 in favour. And abstentions? Thank you, that's 1 abstention. We now move to item number 10, which is the provision of internal audit services. I would like to invite the Corporate Services Manager to provide an introduction to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The current internal audit service is delegated at the moment, and that comes to an end on the 31st of March 2022. We're looking to ask the committee to agree to the sort of continued delegation, but reflecting the change in the sort of responsible authority, being North Northampton Council from 1st of April 2022. Recognising the changes that have been undertaken in the Northampton area. At the moment, we feel that the service is quite high performing and represents good value for money, provides that resilience across different specialisms that we need. And in terms of how that's been operating over the past number of years, we feel that that working relationship's gone well, and that the service we're getting is providing good value for money as well. The other authorities that are part of this, in terms of Rutland and the Harbour District Councils and County Councils, are looking to progress this option as well, and looking to just sort of continue the relationship and just change their delegation agreements to reflect the change in the sort of lead authority. And if we're able to agree that at the moment and through the committee this evening, then we can progress that collectively and hopefully move forward with some synergies and best practice as well moving forward. We've undertaken a lot of sort of benchmarking previously around the process and the fees and what's being charged, and we feel that that is still relevant at the moment, and that the reason we're asking to continue that as laid out in section 5.4 about the justifications are still valid, and ask members to support us in continuing with that relationship and delegated service. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Before moving to any questions, I would like to invite a proposer and a seconder.
So, what is the protocol, Chair? I'm highly supportive of this, but I want a slight amendment. How do we deal with that?
I would look
Do you
to
wait and then come
Natasha.
in after? What's the process?
Ordinarily, we would have a proposer and a seconder, and then you can propose your amendment once there's already a recommendation on the table, because before that point, there's no recommendation to amend as such. So if that's okay, we follow that process.
Okay, so I look for a proposer, Councillor Holmes, and a seconder, Councillor Posnett. Thank you.
So Councillor Pritchett, at any time you can come in at any time to propose, or you can listen to if there's any debate.
Thank you very much.
It's up to you.
I'm fully supportive of this. Value for money, consortiums that know the business are much better than buying in from private firms, and I'm fully supportive of this. However, the point is that there should be a service level agreement that has certain characteristics of the process, allowing the chief auditor to whistleblowing process if they need to speak to the chair of the audit committee or somebody else, various access arrangements, performance monitoring, escalation of issues, and notice risk sharing and notice periods, because our responsibilities as an audit committee are covered in the Sit for Audit Committee's practical guidance for local authorities and police. So I'm supportive of this, but I'm not prepared to support a proposal that we allow somebody else to go away blindly and do a service level agreement or recommend to the council that we do. I'm supportive of this, providing in such a way that allows the corporate services manager and director to engage and know that they're going to do this next year, but at the same time I would want the service level agreement to come back through the audit committee. So that's my amendment. As I say, I can't support blindly giving it out and leaving it like that. So I'm proposing an amendment that we support it, but the service level, draft service level agreement comes back through the audit committee.
Yes, David, thank you.
Yeah, I just wondered if actually if it was done in consultation with the chair of this committee, whether that would be something you would be comfortable in suggesting, Councillor Pritchard, just in case of timelines and when committees are being held, etc. So that the elements of the sort of information that you're asking for is covered. We've done that in the past before, where sometimes it's in consultation with the chair. So the Director for Corporate Services would sort of have a conversation and share that with the chair and run it through that way, if that is something just as
no, it needs to come back to all members. I've got no problem. I think it's good to go forward with the service, and lots of things I've just mentioned, and then what's in the official CIFA responsibilities for us need to be in, you know, that we need to be in the service level agreement, and we need to own it, see it, and members need to see that they're happy about the arrangements for engaging and terminating, you know, if somebody in 2 years' time wants to change their mind, that ultimate, which I'm hoping it's not going to be the case. So I think we would need to see the service level agreement, but that doesn't lessen the commitment to agreeing the contract. As far as I'm concerned, you know, you can sort the service level agreement out, and what I'm asking for would hopefully be in it anyway.
Can I just clarify? So, are you would like to come back to the committee before anything's signed, or you just want to make sure that you have sight to the SLA once it's been developed? Just trying to make sure that I'm clear in terms of anything that.
No, I think it needs to be approved by the audit committee, but there's no reason why you can't engage them and let them carry on with the work. It's normal protocols from what I've seen before.
That's fine. Thank you. Just wanted to do.
Through you, Chair, is it okay if I just clarify? Councillor Pritchett, sorry, can I just to get confirmation from you then that you're not amending any of the recommendations? You want to add a recommendation that the service level agreement comes back to this committee?
Yeah. It comes back. It comes back that we engage the auditors as proposed, but the service level agreement, we just don't give delegated authority for somebody to go off and do it without. It comes back through us to finally approve.
And you're happy for the other recommendations to stand as they're written?
Yeah, the people go off and do it. We just want
Yes.
to approve the
So-
document that they're happy with at the end of the day.
Thank you.
So if you can find a form of words for that.
So that creates a 2.4, recommendation 2.4 then, if as such, added on to the other recommendations, which would state that the service level agreement for the delegation comes back to the committee, to the audit committee for approval.
2.2A, would it be? And then after you've agreed it, the Director of Corporate Services does 2.31 and 2.32 in the chronology of events. Isn't that how it would go?
We can add it as 2.2A if you
Yeah,
prefer
that
to
would be
do.
the.
Okay, so we've had an amendment proposed to add a 2.2A. I would like to seek a seconder for that amendment.
Chair, before you seek a seconder, may I just come in and seek a little bit of clarity? It's very difficult doing this hybrid, but I just wanted to seek a bit of clarity from Councillor Pritchett before we move towards a seconder. So the recommendation is that this committee recommend that council, one, delegate its internal service to North Northamptonshire, and that comes as a result of a change in who employs them. I don't think that I'm sensing there's an issue with that element from what Councillor Pritchett has said. The second one is also a recommendation to council that they delegate authority to the Director for Corporate Services in consultation with myself to finalise the delegation agreement. By adding that, what this committee is doing is actually recommending to council that the service level agreement is presented back to which council meeting or audit and standards?
Audit and standards, because we have to own, it's quite clear in the SIP for guidance, we have to own the responsibility for audit, and it is for us to finally approve that service level agreement. And I've not seen an issue with that in the past.
No, Councillor Pritchett. So on that basis, I would probably recommend that you add a 2.4, which is the service level agreement is presented to the committee, the Audit and Standards Committee.
Yes, well, whatever, yeah, put it in anyway, wherever, whatever it comes back.
It just needs to be clear so that members can second and debate on that amendment.
Yes.
Okay, so
yeah.
Chair,
yes, Councillor Illingworth.
forgive my presumptive manner, but yes, I believe it's right that it needs to be offered to the existing proposer and seconder if they're happy to have that incorporated, and then it doesn't need to be voted on in its own right. It becomes part of the composite motion, shall we say? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Illingworth. Okay, so do the proposer and seconder of the original recommendation agree to Councillor Pritchett's amendment? Yeah, okay, brilliant, thank you. I would now like to open the debate to members. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, so I would like to move to the vote. Can we have all those in favour, please? So that's 7 in favour, and any abstentions? Okay, that's 1 abstention. Thank you. And the final item on the agenda, number 11, is any urgent business. I have no urgent business, so I believe is that the meeting closed at 7:38 p.m. Thank you.